Okay, well, it's 8:15 in Whatcom County, 9:45 p.m. for all those attending via India. And so let's call our Whatcom PUD meeting to order. And let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So, normal agenda, we have the approval of the agenda. So, any changes or modifications to the agenda? No, then I'll entertain a motion to.
Commissioner, I would add one that we did yesterday. We had one edition of a resolution. I did resubmit the agenda to our mailing list and to you all as well. I'm hoping you got that. And that would be the only change, and I would ask that Commission approve with that one addition.
Was that the warrant?
Yes, that's the cancellation of the warrant resolution. Yes.
Thank you. I think, okay, so that's what I was assuming is for any issues with that?
No, I move to approve the agenda.
Okay, wait a second.
I second. Did you second,
okay.
or did I? Or you
No, second yet. No. So motion a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. And then let's move on to the consent agenda. That is the minutes and the claims of February 25th and the minutes of February 11th, our last regular meeting. Is there any discussion on that? Or if not, let's entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
I second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. And let's open up our first public comment period. Thank you. Any comments in the room?
Nothing in the room.
Let's see, I don't see any hands raised. Does anybody wants to make a comment? Wants to raise their hand? If not, we'll have another comment period at the end of the meeting. I'll go ahead and close the public comment then and move on with the agenda to old business. And so the first item on, General Manager's report. Sorry, Garrett. No. Kurt.
Sorry. We do have to, we want to declare an emergency for our 115K transmission line. We have the three-way switch pole on Imhoff Road just north of Slater. And that's where that's our pass-through from BPA to Phillips 66, where we also have our connection to Plant 1 power. And we had, during a routine inspection, we found some hot spots on one of the switches that heads out to the BPA line. And so we have opened that switch, and we're working on bringing in some contractors and working with engineers to either find out what exactly the problem is or what kind of repairs need to be done. Plant 1 and Phillips are obviously still online. We're running through the PSE yard out by Phillips, but we're declaring an emergency because, like I said, the switch is open. It should be closed, but we need to figure out what's wrong and how we're going to repair it. So I just wanted to pass that along to the commissioners.
What's the timeline on something like that?
We're still trying to determine that for sure. So it's essentially, it's a three-way switch where we've got one way to BPA, one way to Plant 1, and one way to Phillips, and we have the BPA line open. And there was some hot spots on the switch, and so right now we're working with contractors to figure out who we can get out to fly up in a cherry picker and get their hands on it and see what's going on there.
And was this using, Kurt, our thermal imaging,
Well,
drone?
it was just gonna be a drone inspection, just a visual. But because they found some things that seemed a little odd to them at the time, they actually had thermal. And so they just did thermal on that one section.
Thank you.
But the drone inspection was it was a prior arranged thing we were already working on.
Do we expect this to be a substantial, expense over the next few weeks? What are you thinking?
Well, we're trying to we're hoping that we can just repair the switch portions, of the pole. We're really hoping that it's not anything more serious to the pole structure, but we're gonna have to do some, probably some X-ray testing if we don't find anything in the first portion of the test.
Okay. And, thanks for that update. It's really important that you and the crew are on that. Is any further comments from the commission or requests for information? No?
I understand you've declared an emergency.
Yes.
Okay, so that's not something that requires our approval, right?
No.
GMT.
You delegated that
We
authority.
delegated that, right, of course,
Right.
because you wouldn't wait 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, but we'll get a report the next meeting. and
Mhm.
update you.
Yes, we'll keep you updated on what's going on. So we met briefly with engineers, but they were just kind of like, well, we need to get somebody up there to touch it essentially.
Yeah,
So, but yeah, we'll keep you updated with, there's been no cost at this point.
at this point, right?
Yes.
Right.
Thank you. Okay, so we've completed the general manager's report then. Is there anything else you want to cover, Kurt?
No, I'll just go right into the operations report, and I just wanna, say that we made it through Frazzle. We actually had to rent some equipment to make sure that we were prepared and everything, and we did go 1 week, we went to a 24-hour crew schedule. So there will be some costs for rental of equipment, but we never actually went into Frazzle. I think maybe there was about an hour one morning where the river was starting to ice up, but we never actually got there, even though it was cold. There just wasn't enough wind, I think, to really push us over the edge into Frazzle.
Good.
So, but everything stayed online and everything was fine through there.
Okay, thanks. Any questions on the operations?
Not for me.
Okay, that's all I have for now.
Well, thank you. So let's move on to the old business. So, Annette provided us a memo on the bond sale report. And very helpful for me to know that, well, the next window for us to be visiting a bond sale will be in 2 years. Is there any, Annette, would you like to, or Kurt, is there something more to be said about that item?
Actually, at 8:30 local time to Whatcom County this morning, Annette's having a meeting with the bond people for the final step for the sale of the bonds. It's just, I'm a little bit, I keep calling it putting the bow on the package sort of thing, but everything's done. This is just the last final meeting, and she's having that at 8:30 this morning.
And then for those of us who would like to know, that would be 10 o'clock Indian Standard Time.
Okay.
Okay.
And Annette had her hand up, I believe.
Oh,
Please, then,
yeah,
Annette.
sorry. Yep.
Hand up, Annette.
Oh, does she have her hand up?
That's
Yes, she
Nancy.
did.
Oh, she did have it up.
She has it up now.
Okay. I need to get to my other computer.
Thank you for noting that, Jeff.
I'm your clerk. That's what I'm here for.
I'm sure you all saw this in the memo, but we got a brief, oh, there she comes.
I'm sorry,
Hi.
I have like 2 minutes before I have to
Yes.
grab the call, but, yeah, I tried to be as clear in that memo as I could, but we're right at the edge, we're having our wrap-up call, the funds have transferred, so we're all good. There was a little a little stress on that last night, but I think we're all good, so,
Very good.
yeah, now we're gonna have to start building, so. Was there any questions on the whole bond?
Not from me, but thank you for all the work.
Yeah, thanks again.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, well, if there's nothing more, and for Kurt, for the next agenda, I don't think we probably need the bond sale on the agenda for the old business. Just passing that back. Is there nothing else on the bond sale report? Let's move on to the broadband update.
Good morning.
Your time shining.
Oh.
He's like, I gave you notes.
I know, right? Good morning, everyone. I'll be brief this morning, but let's start with the current Point Roberts project. On that front, things have been moving along just fine. We are, as we stated in previous meetings, waiting for the remaining pole permit packages to come back from PSC. And right now, we're at around 800,000 or so for all the make-ready costs required by PSC, and there's still 2 outstanding. So those could come out, those 2 could come back at anywhere from 30,000 to 100,000. We just don't know yet. So we're waiting on those. All in all, those make-ready costs might exceed the actual cost to construct the network. Just to give you an idea, we're seeing really high costs, probably warranted and valid, just higher costs than what we all originally anticipated. And we're seeing that across the county, the Port of Bellingham and their PSC full attachment requests, they're seeing high costs as well. So if it gets to a point where it exceeds our available funding budget, we'll have to come have a larger conversation with our private partners and our funding agency. But essentially it's eating into our contingency at the moment. So nothing to fear yet. We'll keep you up to speed on once we get those final permit packages, and then we can make a decision on how to move forward. So just want to keep you up to date in case there's some major decision that we'll need to make in the future. But as of right now, I'm still not concerned at this point. So that's Point Roberts. Also working with the port on the IRU with Wipitel. So that's in the works now with Sitkin's office and the port. So that's moving along just fine as well. Any questions on Point Roberts before I switch to
None for me.
the
I have one question, but Eddie, do you have a question?
I don't.
So then, my question is about the Point Roberts, CAC. What does that stand for? The Point Roberts Community Advisory Committee?
the crack
Uh,
group?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I am asking about that only because, we've made a change with the support of the commission. It would be appropriate maybe to just update the Point Roberts community, and whenever the next meeting is, or is that something that you think can you circle back with the team, Chris, and see if you're planning to provide an update? It just seems logical to me that you would give them an update because we've made some changes.
Yes, and we will absolutely follow up with them again, and just so we have been regularly invited to that crack group. And if I haven't been in attendance, it's been our counterpart over at the port, Tyler Schroeder. He made a presentation at the last meeting, letting them know about the relationship and high level changes that we've made. So we've kept them up to speed in terms of our plan they can expect moving forward. And like most changes, we'll want to keep reiterating that in future meetings as well. So it's by no means a jump into one meeting throughout the year and let them know what's going on. We don't see them again, right? So yeah, and the folks there, the leadership for the PrAC committee have always done a really good job of continuing to reach out and offering us to come give a presentation. And we often go and do that. So I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, it's helpful. Thank you. Please proceed.
Sure. Oh, and then I think I mentioned in the last meeting, we have started the tribal consultation with the State Broadband Office and Commerce and DAP. So they're reviewing our inadvertent discovery plan now. And they may require in some areas at the point, which is of course warranted as well, a on-site archaeologist during construction. Which just means additional dollars needed for the project to make that happen. So that's Point Roberts project. For Wisbo, I know you probably heard that some applicants are starting to get calls from Wisbo. I know, what I can tell you is that the port, I know, is set to meet with the broadband office this week. I think it actually happened yesterday. But I don't know the full details of that meeting yet or what's happening. So plan to get up to speed this week on those conversations, and I can get back to you at the next meeting with what's going on. So it's exciting to know that Wisbo is making the rounds. I know they've reached out to many other applicants around the state. And so hopefully some of those projects that we all worked on will be removed from round 2, meaning that some of them will have been funded, but I don't know. So more to come. That's what I know on BEAD. But I know round 2 will open up in March. That will primarily be a hybrid fiber and wireless and or a satellite option is what we'll be looking for in round 2.
Okay,
Happy to take any questions.
does that complete is there any questions on the broadband update?
None for me.
Okay, let's move on to the adjudication update.
Nothing new, the court, case committee is continuing. Ecology is indicating they're gonna send out the mailing for the adjudication petition to all the parties on March 17th. That's what we heard last week. We have some draft rules on motion practice, timing, electronic service, etc., that we're doing a final review for, and then we'll be sending those to the court for their review. We anticipate recommending a moratorium on motions for a few months to let the court go through the process of adopting the rules of procedure. So we're trying to prevent ambush by motion practice, and keep it orderly as best we can. Otherwise, not much happening at the court right now. The court is gonna set a water day. We don't know what day. They're still trying to sort out court space. And we're still struggling through the limitations of the software that was acquired. But hopefully they'll find solutions. And I'm not giving you all the nitty-gritty details because that'll take a long time and it's really legal procedure wonky. So if you're curious, I can talk to you outside about it. It's about
Any,
time, notice and
Any
service.
questions for John?
What do you mean by water day?
So we're trying to structure a process where, okay, I'll step back and try not to get too wonky. So the issue is that lawyers, in today's world, we service other parties through electronic service. So I have to serve you with a motion 10 days before the hearing. I do it electronically. I don't go mail it to you, or I have a service processor walk and deliver to your office. So you can imagine the difficulty with 10,000 parties.
Yeah.
If you want to file a motion, you've got to stamp 10,000 at 65 cents. And you're somebody living out in the county who, it's gonna be too burdensome. So from when you have service is when you calculate all your dates. But I'm aware of a motion, so when am I served? What are my dates for filing a reply? When are my dates for response? And so do we then set it up on a calendar date, or when do we know? So the court's contemplating saying the third Thursday, whatever day of every month is gonna be our day to hear motions.
Okay, yeah.
So that's, I want to give you a little context of what a water day might be. It's the motion calendar in the court, but it all ties back to when you can have service. And if you're not electronic service, how do you start calculating it? So we're getting into the weeds on that.
Right.
And how do we deal with the parties that don't have broadband and are on a well, which is probably a lot of folks out in Glacier or East County. And so how do they get service, get notice, and how can they participate and, minimize their costs, but there'll be some obligations to go to the court, go to the library, go somewhere to find out information.
Okay. Any other questions for John? John, are you planning on, is this a place you would like to address any bills related to the adjudication, or is that, would I do that somewhere else in the agenda or
I
another time?
was trying to find out yesterday the status of the bill on the opening of the water rights legislation. I did not find out from Bill. I'll try to do some search here on, while we're going on, if I have anything to add at the end. When I last heard from Bill Clark, was that the reopening of the claims period was favorable, but I don't know that it made it out of all the committees and it's still alive. So I'll try to search that out while we're here. In other words, I don't know the legislative cutoff.
So then, if there's no further questions for John, can we move back to the Andrew and then talk about geothermal?
I don't think we have any changes in the geothermal at this point. Nothing.
Okay.
There's nothing passed down.
Is Andrew still on the meeting?
Correct.
If he was, he can speak up, but otherwise, let's move on to the strategic plan update. Kurt, do you want to give that?
That's another item that Chris has not really given me any feedback on that, so.
Okay. All right, well, if there's no new information on geothermal strategic plan, let's move on to new business. Is that fine with commission? Okay, let's move on to new business. We've got two items under new business versus the action number one, which is the work order under the agreement that we approved, I believe, in our last meeting with complete design for engineering service related to the districts in Talca and Petrogas isolation valves. And
Right, that.
go ahead, Kurt.
So yes, last week or last commission meeting was about Petrogas reimbursing us for construction costs. And this work order is with complete design for the complete engineering of the vault. Previously, the original feasibility was done by Consor, who's actually our Plant One engineer. So we're having complete design do the engineering, the full engineering of the vault down to all the full details of all the valves and all the meters and everything else. And this work order is all the way through construction. It's full engineering, bidding of the project, and construction service support as well. So that would be, as you know, that's the main delivery point for the Petrogas terminal and the defunct Alcoa and Telco plant. So this would be engineering.
Is there, did I cut you off? I'm sorry. Was there
No, I
more
was
you
just
want?
saying, questions?
Questions? I have one, but. Okay, I'll go ahead then. Okay, so, Kurt, my question is this, is that when you rely on a vendor to do kind of almost a turnkey project for you, one of the things that's important is to think about, are they doing it the way you do it? So what I'm curious about is how have you into the original agreement and as part of this work order, are you thinking about design review? So that you have the opportunity to make sure that this vendor is doing the work in a way that really conforms to our own assessment of risk, our own assessment of thoroughness of design and completion of work. I think you probably know what I'm going, and if you can just address that question, then however you see fit.
I think that I can address that by providing an example of what was different between the original feasibility design and what we've already talked to with CDI. And so the line that runs down to the terminal is a 14-inch line. And that's not necessarily a common size. So what CDI said is, why was the vault designed for 14-inch valves, 14-inch? Why was everything designed for 14-inch? Why don't we just design everything at 16-inch, which is a much more common size, and just have a reducer down to 14 as it leaves the vault? So that doesn't change any of our metering, it doesn't change any of our controls, but it allows us to have shorter lead times and likely lower costs for the materials of what's gonna go in the vault. So I would say that's one way to show that that it's something that we didn't necessarily catch at the time, but the engineers just said right off the bat, like, well, this is a weird size. Why would we design the whole vault to this? This is gonna be more challenging. So if that answers, hopefully, but I can also, you know.
It definitely tells me about the value of the vendor that you've vendors that you're working with, and the vendors that you've chosen. The other part of it is that sometimes vendors develop practice and procedures that are based on their own sensibilities of how to manage a project. And what I'm getting at, when you do a turnkey project, they don't necessarily incorporate your way of doing things. Is that even important on this project? Is number one the question, and number two, if it is, how are you making sure that they're executing the project in a way that conforms to your and your team's priorities in doing this kind of a project?
So another way that we look at these things is having the same equipment across our facilities. And so that provides ease of, you know, providing parts if there's a problem, if there's something fails. So if we use the same meters in all of our vaults, as well as we're using them in our plants, and we're using the same kind of valves, everything's kind of, I can't think of the word right now, but it's all standardized. So
Okay.
that's one way that we look at it, is making sure that when they say, okay, well, we're gonna use this meter and this brand of valve, and say, well, we have everything else of this brand in plant 1 and in plant 2 and in other satellite facilities, we want this type of valve and meter. And so that's our way of making sure that our standards are kept, and we're providing feedback to our engineers.
I've got no further questions, and maybe I'll think about the answers and think about how to communicate what I was curious about more later. It's not essentially related to this item on new business. Just make sure that's clear. And
Their
conversation.
process is cool. Are you
What's
asking
that?
about, whether their processes are the same? Is that, can you give an example of what you're asking?
Yeah, okay, so I've worked for a lot of companies that outsource big chunks of their work. And it makes a lot of sense for the PUD to be doing this. 100% support this new business item and the approval of the work order, just to be clear.
Yeah.
But I'm just thinking about when you outsource work, the vendor that's doing the work on your behalf, one of the ways to ensure that they're doing it the way that you would do it is to have regular design reviews of their work. And I didn't know if design, how that's being handled, and if the team has thought about how much the team has thought about that issue.
I see.
But it's not, Commissioner, it's not this, I don't want to hold up the meeting with this one item, and it's not like staff was prepared to discuss this with me. So I'll make a note to myself to follow up with the GM when we connect him next.
Well, one thing that I could add, Commissioner, is that we have it's not necessarily in our work order called out by number, but as part of their scope of work provided to us, there is regular check-in meetings that we have. We don't say this is the vault and they give us 100% design and then that we just accept what they have. There's a 60%, 90%, 100% design review meetings where we provide feedback during the design process.
Great. Well, thank you for that answer. Appreciate it.
Well,
I'm
I'm going to move that we approve work order number 4 with complete design for engineering services related to the districts in Talco and Petro gas isolation valves.
For an amount not to exceed 137,000.
For an amount not to exceed 100 and what did you say, 67,000?
Well, actually, I want to just flag as a typo on page 2, but it says it's written out as 120,000, but the dollar amount is 137.
137,770.
Clarify, so that's the one that we're setting.
So 137,770 is the number. Where's the 120?
It says 120 on page 2 of the work order.
Oh, okay. Oh, yep, I see it there.
Minor thing.
Do we-
just type it up.
Yeah, should we make any, do we need to make any motions on that, or can staff fix that?
I think it's just a typo to Craig,
Okay.
but just to flag before we, sign the thing, I guess.
Yeah,
Great, thank you.
But yeah, to clarify that, yeah, I second the motion.
great.
Okay, so motion is second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Great, thanks, Commissioner.
And then lastly, on that, Garrett and, God, sorry, Kurt and staff, if you could, let me know if, cause both Eddie and Jamie are in the room there. If you need me to sign something before our next commission meeting, Kurt, let me know. I'll be glad to come in next week and do that.
Great, thank you.
Okay, that wraps up that item of new businesses, and we have one more, which is 8B, resolution 1, which is a cancellation of warrant.
Good morning, commissioners. We had Consor, unfortunately, their check deposit machine isn't able to read the MRSI on our checks. So we are canceling both of their warrants so we can set them up as an ACH transfer so that they can get their money that way instead of having the hassle of, if we cancel a check, they still might not be able to read the next check. So that's why we're canceling.
Great.
Thank you.
So is there any further discussion on that, commission?
Nope.
If not, let's entertain a motion to approve resolution number 872, authorizing the cancellation of warrant for Consor North America.
So moved.
I'll second. Okay. And all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay,
So
that
who
concludes,
seconded on that, just to be clear?
well,
The audio cut it out.
I think we did it at the same time, but
Eddie seconded.
Okay,
pick your
okay.
second, pick your second, Joseph. Okay, that concludes new business. So let's move on to commissioner reports.
Sure, I'll start. So, YRO 1 is canceled.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, okay. So I won't be attending, that. Like you both, I attended the WAPUDA meetings. I attended online. Thank you for whoever covered government relations. Was it you covered?
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a lot to say about the WAPUDA meetings, and I don't know when it's appropriate to talk about those things. We received the BPA report during the Board of Directors meeting, and it was dismal. They had already started the firings at BPA, and not just admin positions, but some lineman positions and dispatcher positions. Up to 20% of the staff, they said at that point it represented an entire shift of people. So clearly that's a concern. I think Chris had forwarded some information about that as well. My brother's an operator at the Grand Coulee Dam. They had their firings on Monday, President's Day. Just concern, I just want to state my concern over that. Right after we got that dismal information, Representative Michael Baumgartner from the east side got on to tell us what wonderful things the new administration was doing for power. Some commissioners had piped in, wow, that's crazy, because we just heard from BPA they're firing 20% of their staff. So if you want to send Representative Michael Baumgartner an email expressing your concern, that might be a good idea. Also, I think everybody should know, and everybody should be clear, and we should be talking about it. BPA is a self-funded agency.
Yeah.
They don't receive tax dollars. Their employees get paid through their rates. So cutting these positions does nothing to help the federal deficit. You know, it's either, you know, punishment for living here in the Pacific Northwest, or it doesn't fit with the drill baby drill issues. I don't know, but I'm concerned about availability for power here in the Pacific Northwest, considering all of these agencies are being gutted. Also, and I don't know if it matters, but I had reached out to Sharon Shoemake about the Senate Bill 5445, which is the bill that it's Wapuda's bill for electric, just to talk about resilient communities sort of in the face of these. And it looks like Brian has his hand up.
Morning, Commissioners. I just wanted to add to what you said, Commissioner. The next shoe that may drop and something to watch for with Bonneville is you're exactly correct. It's a revenue-based agency. They pay their expenses through revenues from power sales and transmission sales, but they also have borrowing authority from the federal government. They've never missed a payment on repayment of the money they've borrowed, but that might be an area where the administration may choose to cut back on as well. And unfortunately, if that happens, that borrowing authority is necessary for all their transmission projects they've got in the queue. So let's hope that doesn't happen, but it's serious times at Bonneville.
Yeah, thanks, Brian.
And of course, Bonneville, like the national parks and other public assets, are a place to raise money and to privatize. So that what came up in the last administration under this president, and it's something that. So I want to address what you started off with, Commissioner Arnett. I don't know if you'd rather do that at Wapuda, or if you want the three of us to have a conversation on that. If you want that, we can absolutely add it to the next agenda, or however you see fit. But I'm very supportive of us having this conversation and making the time for it.
Yeah, I sort of feel like, I mean, we were elected by our constituents to like face these big decisions, and I feel like we should coalesce behind something, you know, to talk about resilience, to talk about power, to talk all of those things. So that's just my input.
Would we like a agenda item next time?
Yes. You want an item on the agenda? You want a special meeting? How would you like to see that addressed, Commissioner?
I think it might be best to have a special meeting, just because I know that we have a habit of getting wordy.
Right, so you want to do that as a Zoom, or you want to do that as an in-person?
Probably Zoom would be best, just with my schedule right now.
How do you feel about that, Commissioner Yuri?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I'd also be happy to discuss it more right now, since we probably have some remaining time in our scheduled time. And
yeah, go ahead. That was the conclusion of my meeting. So go ahead.
Yeah, I'm willing to do it today too. If you want to do that, I'm a little bit less mentally acute than I would normally be, but I'm just drinking lots of water and trying to stay engaged here. So.
well, yeah, I think maybe we can talk a little more. I think also scheduling additional sessions, if we're to take any kind of like formal action as like a resolution or come up with some kind of response plan, or I think we're still, you know, we got this news. It was really just I think it was while we were in Olympia for the Wapuda meetings, right, is when we're inkling, and Wapuda was sort of reacting to it, just as we were like that had that dial-in with the congressman. And, you know, I discussed this with our general manager last week a little bit. and, you know, I think his estimates ranged from, you know, the whole situation is from not good to disastrous. And it's not entirely clear yet because we don't precisely know exactly who we've lost. But yeah, this is, I mean, it's a huge, I mean, yeah, I mean, it's all ranges of concern, for, you know, safety and reliability and, you know, no less the completion of new transmission projects. And like was said, it doesn't make any sense from any kind of fiscal standpoint, given it was not, I mean, they were generating revenue for the federal government, not taking tax dollar money. So it's baffling. We did discuss it a little bit with Congressman Larson, came to the office last week. Their offices sort of reached out to us just to have a check-in. So I was happy to be in that meeting with Chris Heimgardner and Andrew Entikin was there. And you know, his response was essentially, yeah, affirmed our concerns, but what do they, you know, what
do we do?
what can they do about it? I mean, and likewise, I think with Congressman Baumgartner, you know, I think the message has definitely been relayed directly from BPA and from Energy Northwest and from PUD, and like, you know, they're hearing it. You know, he said he talked to the energy secretary, but like no one really knows exactly what's going on here. And no less, I mean, you know, layoffs aside, there's just the unknown number of resignations of those who just responded to the buyout deal. And yeah, it's a rough situation. So I'm not exactly sure what we do about it.
Nobody is, yeah, that's
no
right,
one is.
yeah.
So yeah, as far as I think, yeah, especially because this is an evolving situation where we're going to find out more. I think, yeah, scheduling a meeting to just discuss what we're, yeah.
How about a Zoom call? And obviously we need Joseph to put this together for us. If you can do that, and Kurt and Joseph.
Yeah, I can do that. And my thought would be to that too, is maybe we should have, do it when Chris gets back as well, so he can.
Is he back? Is he back on the 7th? Or what day is he back in March?
It's back on Friday.
This Friday?
I'm pretty sure, yeah.
Oh, okay. I think that's
Because
right.
that way too, it would, I think he is in DC, correct? So I would assume his input from
Yeah.
discussions there could be invaluable on this meeting.
So so can we say, let Joseph work with the commission to identify a day for a 1-hour Zoom call? That works? Does that work?
For me. Yeah, that's great.
Is that okay?
Since I have all three of you here, is there a preference for morning and afternoon? Or and to me, it would make the most sense if we're going to do this, maybe to do it on an off meeting week. So either next week or within a couple days following the next meeting.
Sure, you mean like Tuesday the 4th, March 4th?
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah, or sometime next week, whatever is best for all of your schedules, obviously. And I apologize. They're not sure whether it's bronchitis or whether it's pneumonia. So my voice is about shot.
Well, my voice is fine. I can't keep my eyes open. That's my problem. So
I think one thing that you might consider your timeline for a meeting is just whether or not this is gonna fall off the news and no one's gonna think about it, and you're gonna keep it in people's minds or not.
I think it's gonna hot.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Kurt, I think it's gonna stay hot. Next week is PPC, and then there's after that is the week after that is Wabuda again. Is Wabuda the 12th to the 14th? Does someone have that on their calendar? Or is it the 19th through the 21st?
I believe it's the 12th to 14th. And when do you come back?
I'm back on Monday.
Okay, so I mean, we could wait till he gets back, right?
We can,
Yeah.
yeah. Afternoons are usually best for me, but maybe we should, instead of trying to get everybody's schedule out here right now, wait until all of the people are back.
What can happen would be helpful, I think, is if Wakuda or other PUDs or other cities have started passing resolutions or formulating letters, that we coalesce some of that, because that can help in the drafting of something that you may want to formally adopt and send.
Yeah.
You may have your own topics on that go beyond what other entities are trying to comment on, but
Right.
it helps us as staff.
How about the end of how about Friday the 7th then? I'm throwing a, responding to your comment there, hopefully, John.
I think
Friday.
Friday's, sure, that
Uh,
Friday will work for me.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm open then.
And how about
Yeah.
3 p.m. then?
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
great.
Okay.
All right, I will put that on the calendar and I'll get a notice drawn up and sent out as soon as I can.
Well, thank you for doing that. Thank you for raising the concern, Commissioner Arnett. It certainly is a key one.
And on the agenda for that meeting, could we, I mean, we should discuss the BPA situation, but could we maybe just space it to also talk about other, intergovernmental legislative matters, state legislation? And you just brought up Senate Bill 5445, which I think would like to talk about more too.
Okay.
So maybe the agenda topic, because we have to stay on, for a special meeting, when we declare a topic, we have to stay on it pretty strictly. So can
Well, I
we?
think Senate bill, that Senate bill kind of, it almost goes hand in hand because it is talking about creating resiliency within local jurisdictions, some of it.
Yeah, so how about state and federal policy review?
Yeah. State and federal policy, yeah. I think that's broad and that's fitting enough that we can, talk about what needs to be at that point in time, right?
Is that okay? Is that okay with staff, Joseph and John?
Yeah, I was gonna pitch it to John because he's the legal beagle of the group here. So to me, that sounds broad enough. I mean, yeah.
Power resilience, does 5545 fall underneath that?
Yeah.
I just say, you might say, possible responses to grid reliability. That's something really broad, because I don't know where you're gonna go on a discussion.
Yeah.
And I say that because you may politically, may or may not want to say, consider responses to presidential actions affecting BPA. You could say that, but and you may call out it may be more politically pointed than you intend, or maybe it is as politically pointed as you intend, so.
That sounds good to me.
We'll let Joseph workshop that with Chris maybe before they put out the special meeting.
There you go.
Yeah. But they know, what we want to talk about.
Yes, yeah, basically
Well,
state and federal legislative concerns.
Yeah, so you can make the meeting notice and get the notice out and then revise the agenda when.
Yep, I will. Yeah, because we have to notify with basically the terminology in the agenda has to be part of the notice. So I'll make sure it's right.
I think, I feel like anything in that meeting, if we could make sure it would be appropriate to discuss anything that's on the WPUDA or the APPA legislative agenda, given that our GM is in DC right now and is going to come back probably with some information for us. And we know exactly what that's going to be, but yeah, and as well, there's a number of things in WPUDA's agenda. I don't think we need to discuss all of them, but that would be appropriate enough, right? To leave room for that.
That sounds great. That sounds good. So can we move on to Commissioner Yuri's report?
Well, yeah, I was also in Olympia, was it week before last, for the WPUDA second round of new commission orientations, general board meetings, and it was the WPUDA's Day on the Hill, lobby day in Olympia, with, we was there in the morning helping, handing out coffees to folks and, getting, just spreading goodwill. So it was a day before Valentine's Day. And, I'd say we think we're winning hearts and minds around public power for sure. And, but we hosted a reception. It was like kind of a summer barbecue themed lunch inside the Capitol building. And yeah, I think it was definitely a success. At one point they were worried we were going to run out of food. A lot of folks came through. It was able to, mingle with a few folks. Particularly, I think most more useful is meeting other folks from many other PUDs and the staff from, for instance, Franklin County and from Skagit and a few others. But you know, I'd say I didn't come with a hard lobbying agenda there, given, you know, there's, you know, like being there as part of WAPUTA and, you know, a lot of decisions having been made, you know, before I joined the board and things being in discussion. But being there, like, yeah, discussing a lot of our agenda on the Energy Committee and in the Government Affairs Committee. You mentioned Senate Bill 5445 and
It's a hot topic.
I was asked in that meeting by one of the contracted lobbyists for WAPUTA if we speak with Senator Shoemake, and just their hope being that, you know, the bill would get scheduled for executive session and keep it moving, you know, to make the cutoffs and sort of, I guess, just because of that, as being from Whatcom County and Senator Shoemake being the committee chair of the Environment, Energy, Telecom Committee, I was invited to a meeting with a couple of WAPUTA lobbyists and Glenn Blackman, a gentleman from the Department of Commerce, who had expressed some concerns about the bill. And, you know, that was sort of, it was a very like last minute scheduled sort of almost impromptu thing. It was at the, you know, Friday morning, right after we finished our final board meeting. And, you know, I'd say coming into this with, I would say I have some ambivalence about it. I think that there's things I think are things to support about the bill and also concerns, I think, just like, you know, folks at Commerce were expressing, given it's essentially creating an alternative compliance pathway for the Energy Independence Act, which, you know, allows utilities to invest in, you know, resiliency, distributed energy resources, storage, grid hardening activities, but which we're allowed to invest in anyway, regardless, right? And so essentially saying, you know, I think they said it at 2% revenue, I think. Essentially, you know, if we're investing 2% on our revenue in some of these activities, we wouldn't have to comply with renewable energy mandates. And that, you know, I'd say like, it's a bill that could evolve into something and already has been, you know, amended in committee before being passed out last Friday. I believe it made it out of the committee, and expect it will evolve more, especially if it, you know, makes it through the Senate, goes back to the House. So it's one to track, but you know, it's one that I'd say I'm. So I did encourage the senator to move it forward, but you know, just a brief phone call we had, but you know, I wouldn't say I'm ready to like necessarily endorse it, not knowing where it's going to end up. But
I also encouraged her to move it forward, and
Yeah.
I hear those concerns, and also, you know, people can be doing that anyway. I think the percentage is a little bit higher though than the previous, wasn't it?
4%.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's good. It could end up as a really good thing. So, yeah.
Yeah, and that's where I was, you know, just given this as a bill that had been cooked up by WAPUTA, I was, you know, interested in, and I was, you know, at some discussions trying to better understand, like, you know, there's context to this and trying to better understand where some of the other rural utilities in Eastern Washington are coming from, where do they need this kind of incentive to be able to justify, you know, those expenditures or those investments? Or is it actually, or like just trying to understand the extent to which it's actually so difficult for them to comply with the EIA mandates, you know, especially since they're already having to plan, of course, to comply with CETA, which is on, you know, something of a little bit of a different timeline, but that's the part where it seems to me like like we should be able to do both, and there's no reason we shouldn't be able to do both. And because we have, you know, the Clean Energy Transition Act in place, I'm less concerned about loopholes around EIA. I think CETA is more relevant at this point. But I don't want to see, you know, just ways to wiggle out of having to actually, like, you know, plan for and invest in sustainable, renewable, zero carbon energy, and not continuing and increasing our dependence or reliance on increasingly unreliable supply of natural gas. So but you know, all that is, I'd say, like, if this is a way to get the Eastern Washington utilities and folks to be able to make those investments, and, you know, as well as for us, I need to figure out more. I don't think it's as much of a problem for us as an electric utility,
Yeah.
right? So it's really just more about public utilities in general where this is a concern.
Do you kind of see this as though, like, these, again, yeah, it's a bigger deal on the east side of the state, but for them to generate power locally and resilience locally, because, you know, they're talking about community solar, that's something, we have
Yeah.
some community solar here, that instead of, you know, handing over 1.5% or whatever it is, that they can invest in their local utility, their local economy, their like local ability to generate power and be resilient.
Yeah, and those are all things I absolutely support and I want to see, right? And I want to see encouraged. And so this is what I kind of liked about it, was that it was something of
That's what.
something of like a new requirement in the form of a substitution for another existing requirement, which you know, given while utilities generally just want the most flexibility and don't want more requirements imposed, it's like, you know, some way to get that in there and encourage these kinds of, like you were saying, and
those are things that wouldn't necessarily happen on the east side of the state unless it was incentivized.
Right, and that's the
Yeah.
key thing, is like, if that's in fact true, and I think the concern was that, and the concern from other folks was that this would just be like counting things that they were gonna do anyway. Like basically counting things that they already would do or would be able to do or had planned, and then just, you know, just general like grid or their, you know, their distribution system improvements and all of that, demand response programs, things that they were gonna do anyway, and then just count them toward the credit.
Yeah.
So that was where I think there was some good conversation happening with the state agencies and legislators and the lobbyists about like, okay, maybe there's a way we can, if we put measurable metrics in here and like more, you know, use a stat, like define the terms using some kinds of like trying to find some like credible existing definitions of things so we wouldn't have to figure it all out in a rulemaking process. So those are the kind of things that seeing those stakeholder conversations happening, I was able to, I saw it as like, okay, this is like a productive conversation and we should keep that going. And so I do want to see, you know, hopefully maybe that like, yeah, all those things get worked out in the bill. So it's one where I was like, I'm more comfortable overall supporting this than a lot of other things on the list. So.
Yeah.
Um,
Which was gonna.
Yes, I wanted to, no, I'm hanging in there. And I know I really appreciated this conversation. Despite my challenges, I did enjoy it. I want to just caution us though on one issue. And that is we have a pretty blunt instrument with bills that will put us taking an active position on. You know, it's a little bit delicate because we need Wapuda, and of course they need us, and we don't have that much kind of fine detail ability, and it's just gonna take some skill and you know, working with staff at Wapuda. I think, you know, you're smart, Commissioner Yuri, and you'll figure out how to explore those things, and then what you need if you want the commission to make a statement on something that you can let us know. And you know, one of the things we repeat again is if you need a special meeting, if it's a hot bill and if it's in a position and important that for a commission to deliberate, make a statement on it, you can call it either Jamie or I. So one of us might be in India. Might be hard to get a hold of one of us. So you can call, yeah, either one of us to schedule a meeting. That is not a violation of Open Public Meetings Act to request a special meeting. And once the two of you or any two commissioners agree on that, it's a done deal. The meeting has to occur. So just want to mention that, but also again repeat the caution that it's, you know, we want to be careful when we're getting involved with bills that Wapuda is also involved in. So
absolutely, yeah. I'm wholly sensitive to that. I think that's why I felt like I was being cautious about and not wanting to, like, you know, assert stances without having, you know, agreement from the whole commission. So it was more of like, you know, I was like, I kind of went into it without a firm position, right? But it was just, but was happy to be involved.
Mhm.
And with, likewise, so like, I do think there'd be, I think when we have our special meeting on the 7th, we could talk about a couple other things going into before the following week's meetings at Waputa. Because I did, there's some other bills where there's like there seems like a general where I'd be in the minority to speak up on, say, even just to have more of a conversation about environmental justice and how that fits into our, just, I guess, overall approaches to permitting reform for utility infrastructure. Things that I see, like, I don't know, room for maybe more thought on in the Waputa in those meetings. So maybe we could talk about more on the 7th, but yeah, I did not felt like I've been staying in the last couple of committee meetings there. I've been staying silent and feeling like, oh, I'd really love to get into this, but I don't want to overstep bounds or,
You should get into it,
and
even
being-
if it's unpopular, for real.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
what Commissioner Arnett and I have done in the past, we're speaking for ourselves. We don't say we're speaking for the commission when we can't.
And we've had
But you're-
wildly unpopular ideas, Atul and I.
Yeah, and like we do live in a democracy still, and we do get to say things that we believe personally. And we're all reasonable people. We're obviously not going to put words into our organization's mouth. And my opinion is the best way to handle tough, complicated issues is to ask questions. And say things like, here's where I'm confused. Here's what I'd like to understand. And that usually gets you 80% of the way there, in my opinion.
Or come in like a wrecking ball, that's more my.
And that way you don't have to make a judgment. You can just ask the question.
I think it was just that I felt like there's more conversation that we just need to have
Yeah,
around
for
it as
sure.
well, right?
Yeah.
Either way. So, but that, yeah, I look forward to that.
Yeah, me too.
And then I guess,
All right,
I don't think if there's anything else I needed to cover in my report. Yeah, I mentioned our meeting with Congressman Larson. We talked about kind of, just a lot of general things on the list, what's going on here around, our challenges with planning for water resource management, a little bit about adjudication and of course our geothermal project. Our flagging some things where we'll be, wanting to see federal funding in the future, and can say, I guess it is worth noting that the new administration in DC and the new even in the new Alicia American Energy Executive Order and comments from the Energy Secretary indicate they're still supportive of geothermal. So hopefully we should be in shape there to get funding through the state and federal government for that project. So, but we'll have been noting we'll have to work with the BLM and steps in the process where who knows how timelines could get thrown off and things could get delayed. But yeah, I would like to talk. We were talking about how funding freezes maybe coming back to bite us too. So let's maybe save all that more for the next meeting.
Great. Well, like I said, I enjoyed the conversation. I just wanted to mention, of course, I've got PPC next week, and then I look forward to our 1 hour-ish Zoom call to talk about federal and state policy. On the water adjudication front, I expressed support for the bill that we had already discussed regarding that John described. Based on
That's still alive. It's at the House, and the committee's probably gonna be meeting in the House after the 13th, but it passed through the Senate chamber. Like I was emailing Bill Clark.
and then the bill we talked about, Senate Bill 5445, I believe. I also asked Senator Schmidt to pass to that committee. Just letting you all know that. And then on the telecom front, I wanted to mention that here. Sorry, just a moment. That, that, 60, project areas were, I guess we got that in the email from Chris. Let's see it. They're fighting to preserve the 25%, for the matching. Some other things that it looks like, I mean, I didn't want to say this, too much, but it looks like the legislature is going to be going into a special session. It's a tough budget year, so there's lots of stuff that still has to be hashed out. So that's something I heard from a few different people. I think I'm just going to wrap up my commissioner comments there.
Great, thank you.
All right, now we have our last public comment period. So is there anybody in the room or anybody online that would like to speak?
There's no one in the room. I can't see the hands that would be raised, so I'm not sure if there's.
Yeah, I'm looking, there's no hands raised.
No
I
hands
see no
raised.
hands raised.
Yeah, no hands right now.
Okay.
Thank you for that confirmation. All right. Well, if there's no, I will go ahead and close our second public comment period. We aren't planning to have an executive session. That's correct, Joe?
Correct.
Right, so looks like that has completed the business for the PUD. Is there anything else for the good of the order besides me getting to sleep?
You should go to sleep. This was a
Oh, yeah.
record meeting done by
Yeah.
9:20.
Yeah,
Thanks, they're like 2 or 3.
great. Well, if there's nothing else, thank you all for entertaining me, allowing me to participate, and thanks for the support from staff. You all may not know, but I got some help doing a dress rehearsal for this from Aaron, and appreciate the support from staff as always. And so it looks like we did fine without Chris for one meeting. So I hopefully he's knocking it down in DC for us, dealing in a very complex environment. Thank you all, and this meeting's adjourned.